What's up, Hammerheads? Welcome back to the channel. I've been busy doing a few just minor aesthetic things on the car, picking away, trying to make it look a little bit different. And we actually have a project to finish up today. But before we get into that, let's do a walk around. So, nothing different from this angle, but we wrapped the taillights with some tint. They are still plenty red. I don't think cops are going to bother me at all. Did a D badge. I think that was the Quattro. A4 was over there. Got rid of them. Took that one off too at first, but decided to do like a chrome black finish on it, and I put it back on. I think I like it. I've never really been a black badges kind of guy, but you know, it's an Audi, so you gotta flex on them a little bit, leave the badge on. Taillights, I love. They're like the perfect amount of dark. They look really good. Wrapped them, and I'm getting better at it. These actually turned out really, really well. Probably the best thing I've ever wrapped. So that's really all I've done in the rear of the car. In the front of the car, I wrapped over the markers with some smoke to darken them up. This had a chrome ring around the fog light. I wrapped it with some smoke just to kind of mute the chrome a bit. We're going to get new fog light grills down there. More of like an RS4 or an S4 style. These are actually like totally blanked out. There's no air that gets through this. It's just for aesthetics. And I think I'm going to get the ones, you know, that are actually open, that air goes through. And I'm going to, on the other side, over there, I'm going to try to build like a cold air duct for the intake, or maybe even some brake cooling ducts. I want to do something with this. But yellow tint on the fog's sort of my signature. And then what I did yesterday was I blacked out the factory grille, and the factory grille was almost like a weird silver color. It was kind of ugly. And this was all chrome around here. So took that off, cleaned it up. I used an adhesion promoter for plastics and sprayed the whole thing, and then coated it with Sem Trim Black. And if you can see that like satin finish that's on it, Sem Trim Black is awesome. Such a cheat code. This stuff, it's a little expensive, but man, does it lay down like a really nice finish. If you guys can see that, it's so good. And then I did like the same chrome black on this badge, just to make the car look a little bit different. You know, I don't like leaving anything OEM. So those are the few things we did. But I gotta pop the hood and show you one more thing. So because I'm me and I need turbo noises, I gutted the factory airbox out, put this filter in here, and you know, people will say, oh, that's a hot air intake. Well, guess what? If you buy a cold air intake for this car, it comes with a filter and a heat shield. And today we're gonna build a heat shield. So over in this area, because if you can see, my tiny little turbo is lurking right down there. So, and that is right back there, that's a catalytic converter. So, as we all know, a whole booty load of heat comes off of that unit down there. And, you know, your air filter is right here. I mean, that's not very far apart. So, we got to build a heat shroud. It's going to come through here. It's going to tie into this somehow to help hold this. This is just all floppy jalopy right now. So, and then we're going to come over here and tie it into this air duct somehow. We may keep this part, we may lose this part. I don't know yet, but we're going to get into it. We're going to screw around and see what we can figure out. Okay guys, so I've been doing some brainstorming off camera, and I think we have a plan. So, this is the bottom half of the factory air box, and I think we're going to utilize that because if you look down in here, this car doesn't have like a complete tire fender well. That's the inner liner for the tire right there. And that's just like a heavy duty rubberized carpet kind of deal. So, and like you can see the whole way down through there. Yeah, you know, there's a hole that goes the whole way through down there, a hole that goes down through there. If I had a belly pan on this car, it would close that up. But regardless, I think we're going to take this factory airbox and kind of half chop it apart and use the bottom portion of this to kind of hide those holes. And it, you know, has these rubber isolators. There's an isolator there. There's two on the bottom right there. It has a drain if it gets any rain in it. So, you know, we're going to chop this up and utilize this. All right, guys, so I chopped away at this airbox. And you can see, you know, bits of it still down in there. And I think that's all we're going to retain. And from up top, you really don't see a whole lot. It hides pretty good down there. So now we're going to build a heat shield that will attach to that airbox. That'll come up and it'll U around that inlet pipe right there. We'll get that bent up and go from there. But I think the next step is to get out some cardboard and do some CAD, cardboard aided drawing. Okay, so now you're on the tripod, and that bottom part of the airbox is all down in here, as you can see. Hopefully you guys got enough light. So we're gonna have to have a piece of heat shield, basically right here, okay? So what we want to do, we know that this contacts the hood. So we measure up and we can say that about 9 inches hits right at the top of that airbox. I know I'm bending the tape over a little bit, but I think 9 inches is going to be okay. Come back here and we can tell that, you know, somewhere around maybe 8.5 inches is the top of the back corner of this strut tower. So maybe we'll call it 8.5 inches just to give it a little bit of room. 8.5 inches is going to get us basically right up to the top of where this is going to sit. So that should be more than enough room. I think we'd even have room for 9. Now we want to know, like, we're trying to block off this whole area, you know, through here. So I'm going to butt the tape measure in under here, get it close to this radiator support, come back and get a little coverage on this strut tower. We're going to call that 16 inches. So we're going to cut ourselves a piece of cardboard that is 9 inches by 16 inches. We're going to have to cut around this, you know, and get this all in here. And we're going to slip that cardboard in there and start to fit some stuff and see how it looks. So let me make this cardboard. Okay, so after enough hem-hawing around, I figured this is going to be good enough. You see my piece of cardboard down in there. Cut around the inlet pipe. This, you know, cold air inlet is pointing right into this corner. I got a notch there for the MAF to come through, and we'll protect the edges of the metal. When this is metal, we'll protect all that so none of those wires get damaged. I wish that wire was just long enough to reach up over top, but it's pretty short. It won't make it there. I could extend them, but I really don't feel like chopping that harness right now, so we're gonna drill a hole and then protect the edge of it. So I think I'm ready to transfer this to metal. Now, wrestle this out of here. All right, so this is it. Now, on this bottom edge, I want an 1 3/4 tab bent. And on this top edge, I'm gonna bend some sort of a tab as well. So, I got this piece of aluminum over here that we're going to transfer that to. And like I said, we're going to bend the tab down here. We're going to bend the tab at the top so we can hem everything. And those bends will make everything stronger and shouldn't be, you know, as flimsy like that. So I'm going to start tracing this out and make some decisions and see where we get. Okay, so I got a flat sheet of aluminum here, and we're going to start tracing and figuring out. So I know I want a hem on all my ends, and a hem just means this is going to be folded over and pinched flat, and that'll make all your edges much, much stronger. On this top edge, we're going to have a hem and like an angled fold away from the heat shield towards the engine. On this bottom, we're going to have a fold towards the airbox and a hem. Now, I know I want my hem on this side to be 3/4 of an inch. So we'll slide our little piece of cardboard over to about 3/4 of an inch. Now, I want an 1 3/4 fold on the bottom and a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch hem. So that's like 2.5 inches. So we're sitting nice right there. So I know this isn't a perfect world because we're working with cardboard, but this is real close. So somewhere around here, this 2.5 inches, we're going to want a fold. And about 3/4 of an inch in, we're going to want a fold there. Something like that. 3/4 of an inch in. So, and on this front edge, I want a 3/4 bend, and we're going to go a 1/2 inch here and here. So we can add an inch to that. I think we probably just want maybe just a 1/2 inch lip at the top. So we're going to add an inch up here. We're going to have a 1/2 inch hem and a 1/2 inch bend. Right around there is where we want that bend. And right around here is where I want this cut out to start. And around here is where we can make that bend there. And along with the top and everything, we're going to go 1/2 and 1/2. So we're going to be about an inch right there. And I know I want my mat wire to come through right in that area. So let's get Mr. Square and start tracing. This whole sheet is 17. That's that. Now we're going to mark 1/2 and 0. All right, so we got those marks. And here, we're going to mark 3/4 and 2.5. 3/4 and 2.5. And up here, it's going to mark there. And we're going to mark 1/2 and 0 there. Now, this is going to be the edge of our hole. And this is going to be 1 of the hole. And we go measure. I think like somewhere around 3.5 inches. So if they're handy travel circle cutter, I'm just going to mark handy travel circle cutter. So we'll just go. Alright, take this and line our cutter up with 1 marks. Somewhere in there. We should be able to circle right here. That's it. That's all. So that's your cut there. Now, we also need marks right here. So this one mark here. I've got 8 inches. So we're going to mark 8. We're going to go there like that. And we're going to mark 8.5 and 9. Those are all marks. So we take Mr. Square and go to the first out marking that. That's going to be cut. I'm drawing there. That's a cut line. This is a fold line for the hem right here. And this is the actual fold line for the finish line. Okay, so we have those. Now here, because I don't know if I want to be or something, I'm going to inch and 3/4 inch. So we're going to draw in there. That's going to be the hem. And this is going to be the actual fold line here. So, that's one line. That doesn't get a bit confusing. Take your time. You'll figure it out. Listen, if I can distract you, I'm not going to I do a little bit of experience in sheet metal work, but once in a while. Alright, so we'll draw this line through as well. Go ahead. Alright, so I've got those. I've got these. Put that through. We'll grab a trick because I'm lazy. Something like that. This here. This one's here. This little camera. That line. This line. This line. Okay, that is all lines we've drawn there now. So, we can start. That's the way. You blade right through. So, okay, so we're going to I think we can go cut the circle line. On the edges, we're going to protect this. I have some food line. You go food line, you can slice and food line, and it will separate the edge and protect it. So there's our basic shape. Now, I need to take this up to my brake in the other garage and bend this thing up. So you're not going along for that ride, I'll be back. Okay guys, so off camera I did some bending, some folding, some cutting, trimming, and this is where we ended up. This is everything all mocked up and just making sure everything's gonna fit. So you can see that whole plate down in there. It's actually pretty large. Definitely, gonna do the trick. Is it as good as a store-bought K&N unit? I don't know, maybe not, but I think this is pretty stinking good for pretty cheap. So that's it all mocked up. I'll tear some stuff out of there and give you a better look at the heat shield in just a second. Alright, there's everything out of the way. So you can see it goes the whole way to the rad support in the front. And we tucked it back along that firewall. We got a little bend in it. I'm going to put a bracket on this top to hold that over. But, you can see follows pretty good. Yank it out of here real quick. Comes out fairly easy. But you can see, I got a bend on that back side. Got everything fitted up pretty good. And it's strong enough. It's just some aluminum sheet metal. But it's going to be strong enough and it's going to work. So we're going to get that cleaned up, painted, yada yada. Pick up in a few minutes. Alright, after more trimming, more arguing, and making 2 brackets, this thing is finally completely fitted. I had to make a patch plate and move that hole over, and I protected all the edges with some 3/8 fuel line. If the camera will quit freaking out. Hey, stop it. Alright. It's still freaking out. Whatever. You guys get the point. I made a bracket that comes up from the bottom there that the hose clamp for the air filter will wrap around this, and it'll hold that. I made a bracket back here. It's going to come off of, you know, this piece, and it goes to a bolt that was already there. I'm not drilling new holes, utilize a bolt that's already there. So that's it. It is in, it is fitted, everything is good, and now we can paint. So it's churched up with some black paint on it, and as you can see, it pretty much just goes away. Can't even hardly see it in there now. It is down in there, so I think it's gonna work pretty good. Oh, there we go, got a little light on it, you can see it in there. It doesn't look bad, kind of just goes away, and that's the point. Just make it as minimalistic as possible. So that's it, with some paint on it, in, done. Got to put everything else together, and this project is kicked. So there it is, everything is in, everything is done. And, you know, as most projects go, more frustrating than I wanted it to be, but it's in, and it's done. And, you know, like I said, you could buy a K&N, they're like $300. Or you could buy a pod filter and some aluminum and some frustration and make your own for like, I don't know, 75 bucks, 80 bucks, something like that. So, as you guys know, I'm budget minded and I don't really care about brands too awful much. So, if I can make it, if I can fabricate it, I'm gonna. And that's what we did today. So, last thing we gotta do is back this thing out and see if we can get some turbo noises recorded for you. Alright guys, so that's it. It actually sounds pretty good, and that's just putting a pod filter on a stock intake. We have a turbo muffler delete to do, and we're going to do a diverter valve spacer that lets the diverter valve partially waste to atmosphere, which is sort of more like a blow-off valve would be. So we got those two things to do, and we'll get even more intake noise. So I hope you liked the video. There's a lot of frustration and struggle for me, but that's part of it. You know, when you're R&D, in new parts, when you're trying to create your own parts, that's what it is. But for V1 version 1, pretty good, and it's going to do the trick. It's going to work perfectly fine. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you'd like to share on your socials, throw a thumbs up in there. I'd appreciate it very much. Thanks, guys. See ya.